Today, in continuing what I was talking about yesterday, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the hacker ethic. I guess I should give some of the books that it's in. Of course, the primary book that you'll find it in is Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution by Stephen Levy. And it's also argued for in Richard Stallman's Free Software, Free Society. And there's a number of other books. Lessig talks about it a little bit in Free Culture. And Free Culture is the one I would really recommend as an introduction to some of the issues relating to intellectual property that we are confronted with in our society at present. Lessig is a big lefty. I mean, he is, I don't think it would be unfair to describe him as a socialist in his economic theories or opinions. He he always says he was a supporter of Reagan back when he was in college. But he's certainly not now. But even so, his constitutional arguments, his understanding of at least the parts of the Constitution that he references in Free Culture are, I think, spot on. And his critique of the so-called strict constructionists and how they abandoned their principles in the Eldred case, and yes, I am even including Justice Thomas in that, is, I think, spot on. And so I find myself agreeing with this big lefty on all this stuff, which puts me in a pretty odd position being a pretty right-wing person myself. But Lessig makes sense, at least on that. Some of his other opinions, some of the stuff he's getting onto now with his campaign finance reform stuff, I don't agree with as much. But his intellectual property stuff that he was talking about in previous years, I think he was right on most of it. And anyway, enough about Lessig. I was going to talk about other aspects of the hacker ethic. Let's see, yesterday I talked about all information should be free and how that's limited because it doesn't mean that there should be no such thing as privacy. People believe, even the people who say that don't really mean it. At least most of them. The ones who do are just kind of nutty. But it's sort of a general thing that we'd like a lot of information to be free, is I think what it really comes down to. The hands-on imperative, which in my term paper I'm going to argue applies definitely to any device that you own. Whether it applies to devices you don't own is not something I'm going to be touching on right now. I think it might in certain circumstances, but that would take too long to explain right now. So those are the two aspects I covered yesterday. And the other aspects, a lot of the other aspects aren't as controversial. There is computers can make the world better. Can improve your life. That was that really was worth saying back in the 1970s. Nowadays, everyone takes that for granted. So some aspects of the hacker ethic have just become, obvious. A less obvious part of it is the hacker ethics aesthetics, which is that you can make art and beauty on a computer. I believe that, and I think that is a very true statement about aesthetics. That a computer program can be art, as long as it's not written in COBOL. Anyway, so that's the aesthetic. What else? there's a part of it which says, mistrust authority and promote decentralization. Now, I agree with some parts of that and disagree with others. I think you shouldn't trust authority unconditionally. The trust that you place in authorities should be conditional, should be based on whether they are really functioning within the proper scope of their authority for the ends to which their authority was granted. If they're not doing that, then definitely mistrust authority. And promote decentralization because, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, little bits of power held by lots of people is better than a whole bunch of power held by, one or two people. If larger numbers of people become involved, the corrupting influence of power becomes diminished in each individual, and therefore the corruption of the whole is at least slowed down. There's a lot of interesting stuff about power and authority that I'm going to be trying to talk about on this podcast. But that's just about power, really. Promote decentralization is saying something about power. It's saying that power corrupts. I heard something interesting. The Lord of the Rings deals with this notion of power and the corrupting influence of power in many ways. One of the most obvious ways being the ring of power. The whole point of the story is to get rid of it. That's the opposite of most fantasy stories. In most fantasy stories, you're expected to go on the quest to find the treasure, and when you find the treasure, now you have it. You have, succeeded. You win. But The Lord of the Rings turns that trope upside down. You start with having the treasure, and the whole quest is to get rid of it. And it's interesting, I heard someone say, I think it was Peter Kreeft, but I'm not sure. But somebody said, it was Kreeft. Kreeft said, if Tolkien, assuming he's going to be true to his own principles, so if idealized Tolkien found Aladdin's lamp and, rubbed Aladdin's lamp and found, that there's a genie inside, and the genie appears to him and says, I will grant you 3 wishes, you can have anything you want. His first wish, if he's being true to his own principles in Lord of the Rings, would be destroy the lamp. Right? Because such power, Tolkien believed, should not be placed in the hands of fallible and corruptible men. And so I think that's what the hacker ethic is trying to get at in its statement, mistrust authority, promote decentralization. It's saying mistrust authority because power corrupts. Now it's interesting. If you bring in Plato into this dialogue, where the hackers are saying mistrust authority, Tolkien is pretty much agreeing. Tolkien is saying at least mistrust human authority. Plato comes in, and he would say that. Democracy, Plato would say, really extends the power to be in the hands of all the people, and therefore corrupts all the people as a group. And therefore, we end up with things like Socrates being put to death. So I think there is some merit to Plato's critique of democracy. At least that democracy cannot be the all-end-all political system like we often assume it has to be in America. There are circumstances in which democracy is not the way to go. On the other hand, there's some question, can you believe in liberty if you have a sort of Hobbesian view of human nature, if you have a very negative view of human nature? because Hobbes would say that you need government to sort of stop us from being as bad as we would otherwise be. So because of human nature, Hobbes would say, we need strong government. Well, in response to that, one would say, well, what is government except some men giving orders to other men, right? Government is just as subject to corruption as the ordinary people are, and in fact, it might not be too far-fetched to suggest that government is always going to be just as corrupt as the people being governed, or more. I think it's very rare that we have a government which is less corrupt than the population. Because of the corrupting influence of power. So, on the other hand, some people say, it's not really power that corrupts. The corruption was already existent in the men. I'm not sure, maybe there's something to that. Anyway, so that's some of my open-ended reflections or thoughts on some of the other aspects of the hacker ethic. I think the most important aspect of it, of course, is the hands-on imperative. That's what I'm going to be writing my term paper about. But I thought I'd better cover some of the other aspects before I let it go. All right. See you guys next time.